I do want to hear your expertise because, most of the conversations we have are around funding and how, both like where the money comes from and where it goes, but not how it happens. I know how it happens is where you all live and breathe, right? Like is how you actually implement things and make them happen. And so know that I will be here to be a part of that. And also anything else on the local level, you need to know, I'm the vice chair of the now Transportation and Local Government Committee. And I'm here to help with anything else in that area. But I am a weird nerd where infrastructure finance is what I do, both in this job and in my other job. And so anytime you need there's things you feel like you need to be heard, I'm here for it.
Activity. I mean, there's three groups I really listen to: the planners, the economists, and the engineers. In my view, those professions really look at the facts and present them to legislators in just a very objective way. And what legislators need to make good decisions is good, non-biased facts. And I love that. And I've been on your, I don't know if it's national or local planning site for affordable housing, such a big issue in my town. And, well, then I think I just called the guy, or we had a meeting. I know I had a Zoom with him, and there are just 6 key ideas right there that were cost-free that have to do with rezoning municipalities for affordable housing. Mm-hmm. Not with a left tent or a right tent or no. Just here's what makes a difference. And that, I don't hit, I guess when in my non-capital time, I don't usually hit, I don't want to call you guys special interest, but an interest group's websites, but I hit yours for information and facts and a couple others, like League Women Voters and stuff. But I really believe that's one of the outstanding qualities that you bring.
Well, I think the answer is, I think it's enormous. What we do here every day is, try to help Colorado get better and more efficient and use our limited resources in a smarter way. I think we are feeling acutely things like water shortages and drought, climate change impacts, the air quality issues in the Front Range. There's a long list of things that can all be addressed in part by better planning. I think we've got plenty of examples from around the country, places like Houston, dare I say Kansas City, and a few others, where I look at their lack of urban planning as a huge liability on those cities to be able to thrive and be efficient. And it causes huge deadweight loss in people sitting in traffic. It causes health damage because the air is terrible. And Denver is certainly not perfect on these things, but I think we've done better than average. And we have a long ways to go, to continue to improve. And I see the Planning Association as a great partner in being able to do that task in a quicker, more effective way, get more bang for our buck when it comes to state spending and how we interact with local governments. So, I see the Planning Association as integral to the creating the kind of Colorado I want to live in the future, and where hopefully my kids want to stay.
Well, first of all, you're the ones that are really building community. And so I started my career as a city councilor, which really at the city council level, you build things more than you do at the state level, right? I built playgrounds and parks and sewer systems and roads, and you can't do any of that without planners, right? And so planners are really what takes your values of what you want your community to look like, of how you want people to gather, of how you want infrastructure to work, how you want it to be part of people's everyday lives, and you interpret those values into the built environment through planning. And so that's really important. And then at the state legislative level, we're not we're not builders anymore. It's one of the things I actually miss, right? Because our departments are doing that, but we're directing money to those departments that do that community building and do that planning. And clearly we can't build that infrastructure or create that community without the work you all do.
I would love your help on kind of where you think we can get the most improvement in new legislative ideas. I mean, we have a local control state. We have a tremendous amount of deference to the local planning processes, which is appropriate in many cases. But I think we are all struggling with, well, how do we get better faster? How do we bring some of the towns and counties that are perhaps a little behind the times when it comes to planning, or behind the times when it comes to standards and codes? How do we help them, with a hand up or incentives to move more quickly? I would love to hear from you on that, because we just can't afford to leave any community behind. We can't afford to leave any person behind. And I fear that we've got a big divergence in how the metro area is working on some of these issues in some other parts of the state. And so would love your ideas on what we can do at the state legislature to move that forward.
So the ACEC, American Council of Engineering, something, I don't know. I always get off. There's a lot. Just in the off session, like in the fall, they usually invite me to just one of their regional meetings. And sometimes it's in my town and sometimes it might be in Denver or something. I mean, not for the whole day deal, but you meet them and you talk and just get to know them. And then I'm like, oh, I better call her about this question. And then you just get, again, about people and relationships. If you have anything like that, and getting to know Susan was amazing, right? And then just knowing what you guys are working on and you're interested in. And then, if I have a constituent bill, I mean, it kind of works both ways, right? If you need a bill sponsor, but also if I have a bill, I have questions, just really nice like that. Off session to reach out to your local legislators. And also don't, I was a fan, and now I'm just speaking for myself, but not to make it a big thing either. I mean, even if it's just coffee and donuts in a reps district, or hey, we're having this meeting in Denver, where you want to come on down. I usually go to all that stuff.
I think it's really about politics, just as anything is about relationship building, right? So relying on SAL to look at the legislation that impacts planners, but then reaching out and saying, here's my experience as an infrastructure planner. Here's my experience as a water planner. Here's something you might want to consider. Here's something that we've seen work in other states or in city stuff, and here's why it worked, right? And having that conversation and having that repeated conversation, but also on a human level, right? So, maybe I'm working on something else that you might like outside of being a planner, and you're like, I'm not reaching out to you today as a planner, but like, that seems cool. Thanks for working on it, right? Because then I'm going to remember your name and I'm going to remember the conversations we had today. And it's just about relationship building, because you just naturally tend to people that you have relationships with.
Sure, I would say there are two layers. One is having your key members communicate with the key members of leadership in areas that matter. So like for transportation, for example, like talking to the chairs, talking to your leadership, talking to our leadership matters, because those are the people who have like a broad view of what leadership looks like. Second then is having, like if you get past that, it's individual members from within the districts of the person that they, from where they represent, talk to them. So like the folks who are members of your organization, reaching out to them, because when somebody from Broomfield sends me a message, I listen, like I'm there for it. And that's what I would say to be the most effective way of breaking through the noise, because there's so much noise around here. Understand that like it's what representatives and senators will listen to more are the people who are from their communities.
Things that I'm working on, one, I am bringing the transportation bill, the transportation funding bill. So hopefully we're raising $4 billion in the next 10 years to increase transportation funding, right? And so we're doing a lot of stakeholder work around that. I personally literally just got the bill draft last night at 2:30 in the morning. And it's a 100-page bill. So I need to go through it and see what shape it's in. So hopefully we're able to share that with you soon. But that's really important, right? Because when we talk about modernizing transportation, it's both how we're funding it, which you'll see in the bill, but it's also how we're spending it. And I'm sure that you all have a ton of opinions about how we're spending that money, because we want the money that we have on transportation to address both climate, and so reducing VMTs, but also equity and access. So increasing access to multimodal, increasing multimodal. And so much of both addressing climate and access to multimodal goes back to community design and planning. And so making sure that we are spending money in a way that does that. And so that's the biggest lift. We've had over 100 stakeholder meetings on that issue, and we'll continue to work really hard on that. And that's a bill that Representative Gray, myself, the Majority Leader Fenberg, and Speaker Gurnett are bringing. Probably my other big bill that I'm bringing is on climate. So we set pretty ambitious climate goals in 1261 in 2019. And we are bringing Senate Bill 200 this year to make sure that we're adequately funding CDPHE to meet those goals. And we're having robust rulemakings at the AQCC that ensures we meet those goals in a sector by sector way. And so that includes transportation. It includes the built environment, so energy efficiency and how we're designing communities and building things. And then in the energy sector, and then also in oil and gas emissions. And so really planning has a very important role in 2 out of those 4 sectors that we have to meet our carbon reduction goals in.
I mean, maybe the biggest is affordable housing. Like there's work on changing how affordable housing is regulated across the state. And we've dealt with some of that. And that could change like what kind of projects get permitted, placed, etc. And I don't know how that's all going to turn out. Like we've dealt with some of that in some of my committees, both last year and this year. But I would look at that because I think it could change the nature of projects that actually get approved. Because if we expand the nature of what gets approved and what doesn't get approved, then it could change the nature of projects because, the best project, if you're a developer, the best project in the world is the one that actually is approved and you actually complete and get done. That's what I would keep an eye on more, as much as anything else is, do we move, how are we going to move the bar, and are we going to move the bar in those respects? I think that's probably what I look at.
And there's a mutual ditch company bill that actually was really important, but we really downplayed it. So we just kind of mumbled, but it's passing through easily. The biggest thing is going to be spending the federal dollars wisely. And then we have I don't like the word state stimulus because we don't print money at the state. So it's basically income that we got that we hadn't anticipated. So it's not stimulus. My husband's an economist. It's like, that's not stimulus. And I know. Oh, crap. There's the whip. Okay, I gotta go.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, we have gone from the worst budget year in the history of the state of Colorado to arguably the best budget year in the history of the state of Colorado. It's a little bit of whiplash. It also means that we need to be very careful in how we plan and spend that money. We've just closed the long bill, the state budget bill. It's called the long bill because it's 600 pages long, mostly spreadsheets, quite honestly. But we're trying to just create a balanced budget with the limited general funds that we have. And now we immediately take on the task of carefully allocating this federal stimulus money. And so that all involves careful planning. And I think if we have robust local planning processes that take advantage of those resources, that shepherd them, that steward them carefully, that is a force multiplier for the state government. And so this is a monumental task. How do you carefully spend a massive infusion of additional budget resource. Now, the answer is you save a lot of it, which we've done. We've put almost $2 billion in the piggy bank for later years, but we've got almost $4 billion of federal relief that we've got to spend between now and 2024. And so as we can get that out to local governments, to county governments that can tap into their local planning functions and with your members, that's what we need to do, because the alternative is that you just don't spend it wisely or put it on projects that don't have as good a longer run rate of return. And so I think helping the legislature understand where do we get the most rate of return on public dollars, and that can be evaluated lots of different ways. I realize cost benefit analysis is like a fun thing to fight about at the water cooler. I've done a few myself, but when we think about the implied rate of return on a road, a bridge, a school, a park, right? All these different things that are in the public asset portfolio, where do we get the most benefit? Where do we get the most stimulative effect? Where do we create the most jobs? Where do we get the greatest return on future taxation? How does that relate to density? I mean, I think about the studies I've seen in Denver around single family homes are subsidized, several $1,000s a year by the people who live in multifamily situations. If you think about dollars per, foot of street, or, however you measure it. So we've got to get better. We've got to get sharper. And I think the Planning Association is, has the expertise to help us do that. I would love for the Planning Association to reach out directly with bill ideas, directly with amendment ideas. Have Saul looking out for every plausible title of the 800 that we look at every year, and figure out how we add planning principles into the work that we do here. I would welcome that. I think my colleagues would welcome that. It is a relatively bipartisan thing for the most part. And would love to have you help us sharpen, the edge of the legislative blade, so to speak, or the legislative axe. Whatever metaphor you want to use. But look for ways to insert yourself in bills. Look for ways to bring forward good planning ideas that we can use statewide. That is what we need to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, provide your opinions, provide your expertise. Also, I always tell everyone, when you find a problem with a bill, because you are the experts, please send us solutions. So many people often just complain and say this doesn't work. And then I'm like, well, then how do I make it work? Can we share a value around our goals? And then if we share that value, help me find the solution, because you're the expert. And really, you're going to get so much more done if you come to legislators with here's a concern, but here's how we think we can fix it, instead of this just sucks and why are you doing this?
I mean, this is particularly, I suppose, poignant since I'm on the Joint Budget Committee. We meet year round. We never really stop. We have, we do interim investigation and site visits and things during the summer and fall. We look at supplemental emergency appropriations that we have to make when we're not sitting as a full General Assembly. And then we start the budget hearings basically November 1st every year. So the governor puts forward a proposed budget, and we start going line item by line item from November until basically now. We've just completed that process and drafted the long bill. So yeah, I mean, it goes on all year round. I also serve on some interim committees depending on the year, and work on legislation for introduction in January, and talk to stakeholders about different ideas for the next session. I mean, you basically immediately start getting ready for next year as soon as the current session is over. So it's, yeah, I mean, this is functionally a full-time job. To do it right, particularly in the Senate, where you have districts that are 180,000 people. I essentially represent 1/4 of Denver, and there's a lot of constituency work that continues all year round. So that's that's kind of my off season. I mean, I do, try to take a couple breaks with the family, and I do have, I run a couple nonprofits and teach energy economics classes for CU during the interim. So I've got, some side gigs, but it's a lot.
Yeah, so many of us have different jobs because this is not something we do for the money. It's not something that pays my mortgage, turns out. So my other jobs, I primarily train people to run for office, mostly women, and work for a variety of nonprofits, doing a lot of training on running for office and also governing an office. I also do some consulting work with environmental nonprofits working on climate change and air quality issues. And when I'm not working, either my legislative job or train people to run for office, I hike every single weekend as soon as it's warm. I've created on Sundays we hike, and my family and I hike a lot. We also go camping a whole lot. We're hammock campers. So if you want to know about hammock camping, it's far better than tent camping. And so we do a lot of hammock camping and a lot of hiking when I'm not doing my other jobs. And then, so I turned 40 this year in the pandemic. I actually gave up a car. So we're a 1-car family. So instead of getting the car for my midlife crisis, I got an extra dog. So now I have 3 dogs. I did not need a 3rd dog, but that was my midlife crisis, is we got an extra dog. So my dogs are all named after food. So I have Olive and Queso and Waffles.
All about people. It is all about relationships. I promise you. Like, I don't even look at the bills anymore. I mean, of course I look at the bill content, but I just need to look at the sponsor to tell you if it's going to pass or fail or be a good bill. It's really what it's about. Yeah. It's interesting.
We raise families, but we raise families in ways that are important, in ways that you understand, right? Like we enjoy the Colorado way of life. We also understand the decreasing affordability of that way of life as it exists right now, and we're trying to work on that. Again, most of our work is in transportation, right? But mobility is the key to affordability. Like being able to get an affordable amount of time between where you work and where you live is the key to the workplace. And like the last year's been weird, right? Like it's been weird that most people have to work from home, but that's not going to last forever. And so that's what I do. I deal with that, again, not my dog, but for my kids and for the people I care about, creating the best quality of life I can for them.
How important it is that you share your expertise. So I vote on over 500 bills a year, and I cannot be an expert on 500 things. So one, every legislator kind of finds their niche of what they're most passionate about and what they want to be really smart about. So I do basically workplace bills, climate bills, and transportation bills. Those are the 3 things that I do the most of. Sometimes I dabble in like other things when I get convinced by a lobbyist to do so, but those are really what I'm the best at. But I can't be an expert on everything. I can't be an expert on 500 bills. And so your participation in the process is really important, not just for democracy and bringing me your opinions and ideas, but for your expertise, because my job is actually to have enough relationships and sense to know what I don't know and know who to ask. I think telling stories is the number one thing you need to do, because it's stories that change hearts and minds. So you can give facts all day long, and sometimes those facts are believed and sometimes they're not. Sometimes those facts are motivational, sometimes they're not. But you can't disagree with a story, right? Because a story is your own lived experience or the lived experience of a constituent or your community. And so having Saul share stories, sharing stories through social media, sharing stories during committee really does make a big difference.
we were this close to doing a town hall on a bus about infrastructure, and then it got canceled because of COVID. But we may come back and do it. But in general, like yes, and we would be interested to do it together because we're planning on doing a lot of work this year on infrastructure, but it won't be done. And y'all are really good at infrastructure, and that's what we do. So even after this year is done, having town halls and meeting with people and talking about like what the future of infrastructure in Colorado is, and a lot of it, unfortunately, in our state deals with how you finance it and like the challenges there, like would be great.